This is the new Hohem M7, and so many of you guys have asked me to compare it to the previous model, the M6, and also to the MT2, because even though this one is designed for compact cameras, a lot of you guys use it for smartphones because of the higher payload. So how does the new M7 compare to these two gimbals? And the first thing that we're going to do before we go into the comparisons is to actually talk about the things that this gimbal does exactly the same as these two, because these two share a lot of the functionality, just that the M2 has a higher payload. But physically, they look very similar, and in terms of functionality, they're also very similar. But the M7 is a different ballgame. So the first thing is the M button to switch between the different gimbal modes. This is exactly the same as on the M6 and on the MT2. Nothing has changed there. It worked, it did the job. Why changing something that works? And the secondly is the app, the integration with the app. The M7 is just as flawless as the M6 and the MT2. Obviously, the MT2 has a different type of user experience because it's catered to compact cameras and also to smartphones. You can use either one. But in terms of the integration with the app, it's the same. And that's it. That's the length and breadth of the similarities between these three gimbals, because the M7 does things very differently. And the first thing that is going to stand out is obviously this LCD screen that is also detachable. This is really good, and it's not something that you're going to find on the M6 or the MT2. And it goes without saying that with this detachable LCD screen, you get a remote control, a remote on off, and the browsing of the menus and the setting up of the gimbal is all done through this LCD. Whereas on the M6 and the MT2, obviously you don't have a detachable LCD screen, and the functionality of this small LCD is very limited. The M7 is a completely different beast. And not only that, but you now have a live preview on this LCD of what your smartphone is looking at. And this is all done through the AI tracker, because even though it looks similar to the M6 and the MT2, there is a camera here that is integrated within the LCD and is sending a signal so that you can actually see what it is that you're doing. This is not something that you're gonna find on the M6 or on the MT2, and this is something that I have been asking for a very long time, because these gimbals, they give you these advanced tracking options, but you have no way of knowing what it is that you're doing, because you have no way of seeing what the camera is seeing. Now you have this LCD screen that you can keep on the gimbal, or you can detach and have on your hand. So for instance, if you want to do any low angle shot, you can comfortably walk and see exactly what it is that you're doing and whether you are framing correctly and whether the movement is right. This is a massive advantage, not just an advantage, but a massive advantage over the M6 and the MT2, because you don't get that. I mean, the tracking on these two gimbals is fantastic. It's just that now, because with the M7 have this detachable screen, you can reframe your shot a lot easier because you don't need to be right next to the gimbal. And yes, you can have a remote control with these two gimbals, but you don't get a screen preview. And this is really helpful because when you reframe your shot, you can now see yourself in the frame. And if you need to, for instance, have a shot where you want the camera to track you but on either end of the frame, because maybe you're entering a room from the left to right, you want to stay on the left side of the frame, that's now a lot easier on the M7 than it is on the M6 or the MT2, because you can see yourself. On the MT2, if you use a compact camera, you can flip out the screen and then see yourself. But I'm assuming that someone that is watching this video is using the MT2 with a smartphone. So the same problems that you have with the M6, you have with the MT2. You can't see what it is that you're doing because you have the rear lenses facing you and there is no way of seeing what it is that the camera is seeing. So that, in my opinion, is a massive upgrade to start with. Another feature that is much improved now is this jog wheel here, because on the M6 and the MT2, the functionality is very limited. I mean, you really have focus and the intensity of the LED light, and that's it. And let's be honest here, how many times have you actually done manual focus with a smartphone? I'm not saying that you haven't, I'm not saying that people don't do it, but a lot of the times you're gonna be on auto. Now with the M7, with this jog wheel, which by the way is very well implemented either on the M7 or the M6 and MT2, but now you can switch it to do roll, pan or tilt adjustments, and that's really helpful because when you're holding the gimbal, it's really easy to access that jog wheel with your thumb and do any small adjustments. I most of the time keep it on the tilt because that helps me to adjust the tilting, but again it depends on the shot. That's something that you don't have on any of these two gimbals, and I really wish you did. But this is, in my opinion, another really big difference. Another thing that the M7 is very different compared to the M6 and the MT2 is how you set up your time lapses, because again, you can do it through the gimbal, through the different buttons or through the app, but you can also now do it through the LCD. And this is fantastic because you might want to leave the gimbal somewhere to do your time lapse, but you might not want to be right next to it. You might doing a time lapse and it's really cold, and you might want to be able to control the gimbal remotely. Well, this is something that you can do now either through the app, which again is extremely well integrated, or through this remote control LCD, which is also joystick, so you can control the panning and tilting. This is so helpful. Trust me, this is so different. With the M6 and the MT2, to do the time lapse, you have to be right next to the gimbal because that's just the way it is. And when it comes to vlogging, there are big difference between the M7 and the M6. There are a few things that you do the same. For instance, if you want to use the rear lenses, you triple tap 3 times the reset button and the gimbal spins. That's exactly the same. And if you use a wider field of view, whether it's the ultra wide on the phone or a lens adapter, you are potentially gonna see the gimbal. So you tap 4 times the reset button and you go into ultra wide mode, and then you don't see the gimbal. Now the difference is that the M7 has an integrated selfie stick inside the gimbal itself. That's something that you're not gonna get with the M6 and the MT2, because those few centimeters that you get on the selfie stick are gonna make a big difference on your framing and composition. And this is not something that you have on the M6 or an MT2. And obviously it goes without saying that as you vlog, you can get a preview of what the lens is looking on your LCD screen, which is not something that you have on the M6 and MT2, which is again another aspect of this gimbal where having this much improved LCD screen helps compared to this basic LCD that you can't really do much on the MT2 and the M6. And let's not forget one of the biggest and most important upgrades, and is the fact that now all 3 axes are lockable and the locks look really solid. This is a really big improvement that sounds basic in itself. I mean, locking the 3 axes should be a given. It should be a standard feature with every other gimbal. But with the M6, this is not the case. And when I try to put this in my camera bag, this is really annoying because it's dangling everywhere I go. And it does ruin the experience. And the same applies now with the MT2. I've used this gimbal so much because I really like this gimbal. This is such a nice gimbal, but the pan axis locks and it's still rock solid. But this roll axis, sometimes it locks, sometimes it doesn't, and it's really annoying. The tilt axis still works, but this one, it's dangling, and this is again so annoying. Whereas on the M7, these locks feel really solid. I think this is a big upgrade on the M7, because traditionally you'd be like, nah, I just want a gimbal that works and I'm fine with these little things, even if they don't quite work. But over time, as you use the gimbal more and you carry this gimbal and you move around, you realize that having things that dangle is just really off-putting. Another area where the M7 has been improved over the M6 is the payload. And don't get me wrong, the M6 has an amazing payload, but now you have 500 grams and you can always push this payload a little bit. I always say about 20 to 25%. I still don't recommend it. I still don't recommend that people use heavy cages with heavy accessories because, you know, the more you push the payload, the more the motors are working and the more likely it is that the gimbal at some point is gonna give way. Because really and truly, you are hardly ever gonna get up to 500 grams or maybe 525. I mean, you really need to use very heavy cages and lenses to do that. Now, obviously, this is 500 grams, is nowhere near as much as 1.2 kilos as you have on the MT2. And this could well be the deciding factor for many people, is the fact that with the MT2, you don't have to worry about anything. You can use any smartphone cage and any lenses, and you can easily mount them on the gimbal, whether it's upright or upside down if you feel that the smartphone is too top heavy, which is what happens if you tend to use heavy accessories and lenses. But this is something that you're never gonna have to worry with the MT2 because it gives you that range that you can go up to 1.2 kilo, and really and truly you're never gonna have any problem. With the M6, the payload is really good. Most of the times, you're never gonna max out the M6 as it is, let alone the 500 grams on the M7. So again, it's down to what it is that you do, because if you use your smartphone for your filming, whether it's for vlogs or for real estate, and the payload goes over 500 or 550, I would strongly recommend that you stick with the MT2, because even though this is such an amazing gimbal, you're gonna struggle and eventually it's gonna give way. And when it comes to the stabilization, because these are gimbals, the core feature of these gimbals is to stabilize the footage. And the M6 was good, okay? I'm not gonna lie to you, it's good stabilization, okay? The MT2 is actually really nice, but neither one of these two gimbals is what I would call impressive, okay? There are other gimbals that I have reviewed in my channel where I personally feel that the stabilization is better, and I have said it. Now, the M7, I think, is step up because this is really good stabilization. I have used this in one instance surrounded by a lot of people where I had to readjust my framing and my shots, and this behaved really well, and the actual stabilization is really good. I'm not suggesting here that the M6 is bad, because that's not the case. Neither is the MT2. These two are really good gimbals. Now, is there anything that the M6 or the MT2 do that the M7 cannot do? And when it comes to the M6, really and truly, no. There is nothing that the M6, in my opinion, I might be wrong, and please let me know in the comments below if that's the case, because you might have a very different opinion and I would love to hear it. But I cannot see anything that the M6 can do better than the M7. That good this upgrade is. Now, when it comes to the MT2, the only really and truly advantage that the MT2 has over the M7 when it comes to smartphones is the payload. Because with the MT2, you can mount the phone upright or upside down if you use heavy accessories and lenses. And that is a big difference that is gonna give you a lot of flexibility that you're not gonna get with the M7. So if you use lightweight accessories and lenses, the M7 is perfect. It is gonna be such a massive upgrade. 500 grams is what you would call heavy duty payload for a smartphone gimbal, but it's nowhere near the 1.2 kilos that you get with the MT2. And this is really and truly the only reason why I would get an MT2 for a smartphone over the M7. This LCD screen, it's amazing. The browsing of the menus, the settings, everything is done now on this LCD screen, and it's so much better than the M6 or the MT2. This is a great gimbal. I love the MT2. I've used this gimbal so much because I can mount the phone upside down. This is not something that you're gonna be able to do with the M7, but the M7 is such an amazing gimbal in every possible way. And if you want to see for yourself why I'm telling you that the M7 is such a big upgrade compared to the M6, watch this video here. I think you're gonna find it really helpful. And if you wanna see whether you even need a gimbal in the first place compared to using your smartphone handheld, watch this video up here. I think you're gonna find it really, really helpful. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.